Hello and welcome to another I Recommend video. These videos are not designed to be full-on detailed reviews, they're more of a casual look at some games that I'm having fun with and that I wanted to share with you all. So first I'll explain what the game's about and what it has to offer, then we'll talk about why I've been enjoying it, and after that we'll close the video with a quick conclusion. So what is Atelier Ryza, Darkness and the Secret Hideout? Well, it's a JRPG that features a hybrid real-time turn-based combat system and an in-depth alchemy crafting system. It's actually one of the newest games in the Atelier series and has already got a sequel, which I'm hoping to play at some point. The Atelier games have actually been around for quite a long time, since 1997 in fact. A lot of mainline games have come and gone in that time, and sadly I've only ever played a few of them, but I am working on it. The story of this particular game follows a young girl named Rysalind Stout, or Ryza for short, who desperately wants to be an adventurer. She lives on a place called Kirkin Island where there really isn't too much happening, and so one day she grabs a small boat and sneaks off to the mainland with her two friends Lent and Tao. During their time on the mainland, they meet a merchant's daughter named Claudia Valence, and very quickly get into a spot of bother. They're nearly killed by a very strong monster, but luckily they're rescued by an alchemist and his bodyguard. Very soon after returning from the mainland, Ryza and her friends convince the alchemist and his bodyguard to teach them various techniques and abilities, including alchemy. Obviously the story then follows on from there, but I'll leave that for you to discover if you decide to pick this up. The gameplay itself focuses on three main sections, which are gathering, crafting, and combat. The gathering is exactly what it sounds like. You go out and explore the game world, gathering in-game crafting materials from various gathering spots. One important thing to note is that if you pick up one type of item, it will not stack in your inventory. If that sounds weird to you, then you're not alone. At first it does seem kind of odd, but once you know why it works that way, it will make perfect sense. So let's say you gather once from a watering spot and you gain 3 buckets of water. They will not stack in your inventory and will be 3 separate items. Why is this, you ask? Well, basically every single item you gather, even if they're the same thing, have different properties. Every single one you pick up has a level, a letter grade, an element, a quality rating, special effects, and more. It's done like this so that you can use the better ingredients when crafting items. It may seem like an overly complex system, but I assure you, it's actually very easy to understand once you start to use it. The gathering and alchemy crafting systems are supposed to be a big part of the Atelier games, which explains why there's such a big focus on them. Speaking of the crafting system, it's called synthesis, and it will, at first, look like some sort of scientific equation. It really isn't as complex as it seems, and the game does a really good job of explaining it to you. Basically, you choose an item that you want to make, and then you get to this screen. You then start at the circle called Effect 1. You'll notice it has a color and a symbol, in this case green and plant. You'll also notice 2 smaller nodes around the edge of that circle. In the beginning, you just need to add that many ingredients of that color and type. That will then unlock the connected hexagonal node, which you can then add water to, and so on. The recipes will tell you exactly how many ingredients you need to add to create the item, in case you were wondering. It does get a little bit more involved as the game goes on, but by that time you'll be familiar with it, and it won't feel so overwhelming. This is also the first game in the series that actually allows you to automate the crafting if you want to. Apparently this was included for players that want to enjoy other aspects of the game and not worry too much about the alchemy. And lastly we come to the combat. Again, it's actually pretty simple to learn, it just takes a bit of getting used to. At its core, it's your standard turn-based combat, but it also includes some real-time elements to flesh it out. Time moves on continuously and it doesn't stop for you to select an action. If you don't press anything at all, Ryza will just stand there and do nothing while the enemies continue to act. Your friends will generally act on their own, but you can take control of them during their turns if you want to and choose how they act to some degree. You'll notice the timeline on the left. When a character's portrait gets to the empty circle at the bottom left, they can take an action. When you use normal attacks, you'll gain AP, which you can see on the right. When the AP reaches a certain threshold, you'll be able to press a button and increase your tactics level, which gives you access to more powerful skills. This of course resets at the end of every battle. And really, that's about it for the basic rundown of the game. So now let me tell you why I've been enjoying it. I've always been a fan of long JRPG games that you can really get stuck into, and also I quite like to learn new systems and mechanics. I'm the same with tabletop games too, things like Warhammer or trading card games. I've even created a few of my own trading card games in my spare time. I've never done anything with it of course, but hey, if my channel really takes off one day, maybe I will. Regardless, the point is I generally enjoy this genre of game, and there isn't too many RPGs that I don't like. I just really enjoy the feeling of playing through a long story and slowly powering up a character over time. It's a very rewarding experience for me personally, and I suppose RPGs would qualify as my favourite genre overall. I haven't finished the main story yet, but so far it's really quite good in my opinion. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil any of it here, but it is an interesting concept and I'm more than willing to see it through to the end. Also, I find the alchemy crafting system fascinating. It's just so different from any crafting system I've ever used before. It's deep, complex, and flexible, but at the same time easy to learn and understand. The only other Atelier game that I've ever put any real time into was Atelier Sophie back in 2015. And from what I can remember, I'm pretty sure it had a different crafting system, although I could be mistaken on that. But from what I understand, Ryza's systems have been streamlined for the player, and that would definitely make sense because I found it all to be quite intuitive and easy to grasp. The combat is also a high point for the game in my view. I don't have a problem with standard turn-based combat, I actually quite like it, but sometimes you just want something that feels a little bit more kinetic. For me, that's usually a hack and slash RPG or something like that, but Atelier Ryza's mix of turn-based and real-time combat does satisfy that itch. In the vast majority of turn-based games, nothing actually happens until you do something, whereas in Ryza, the fight continues on with or without your input. At first I thought it would be really annoying, because you can't stop time and think about what you're going to do. The thing is though, if I borrow a line from Todd Howard, it just works. It never once felt like I wasn't in control or that I was overwhelmed by the choices. It flows very nicely and the battles were genuinely a pleasure to complete. And lastly, I just wanted to briefly mention the look of the game. The character designs are all great, which is just typical from Studio Gust, and the world itself is pretty nice to look at. It can be a tiny bit rough around the edges from a technical standpoint, but like a lot of Gust's games, the artistic vision and the art direction make that irrelevant. Ryza herself is also a gorgeous character and I really love her upbeat and positive attitude. From what I've played up until this point, which is a decent chunk by the way, there hasn't been that much fan service or anything like that. I have read that the game does have it in places, but I mean, besides Ryza herself and a few of the other characters, I haven't really seen that much. If you've already played this game and you know more about that subject, please do let me know in the comments, or perhaps the game is just a little bit more tame than I thought it would be, which is of course fine, I'm just curious. Anyway, I think that's about all I have to say in this section, so let's move on to the conclusion. In my opinion, Atelier Ryza is a charming and thoughtful JRPG with fun combat and interesting crafting mechanics. If you've never played an Atelier game before, but you're interested in doing so, I would easily recommend this game to you as an entry point into the series. You don't need to have played any of the other games, and if you happen to like it, there's already a sequel out there for you. Ultimately, for my tastes, it does everything right, and so far I've really enjoyed my time with it. I like how it looks, I like how it plays, I like the characters, and I like the narrative. This is a game that I will gladly finish, and by the time you see this review, I'll probably already have the second game in my collection. And so there you go, that's my views on the first Atelier Ryza game. It's available right now for PS4, PS5, Nintendo Switch, and PC. If you can, I would strongly recommend buying the physical version of the game. It's actually very common to find the physical copy of the game at around £25 or $30, but the digital download version is literally double that price most of the time, so do keep that in mind. If you enjoyed the video, I really hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel, and if you like what I do and want to offer your support, please check out the first link in the video description down below. But with all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.